yeah, so on tonight's stream, um, hey Jeffries, it has been a while since you've been in chat, if I recall correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do tonight is go over the Shard of Beronath build that I was using in that video for anyone who's curious about it. And then I really don't think I'm going to run around with it, since I don't actually like the build that much. So yeah, we're just gonna go do an overview of it. This will be uploaded pretty much straight to YouTube. Don't expect amazing production out of it, because I'm doing it live. But I can do my usual build video things here. So, just to remind everyone, Battlemage Reforged. I said Shard of Baronath earlier, I meant Battlemage Reforged. Battlemage Reforged. It's a sword, it's a one-hander. Has a toggle ability called Might of Baronath. This turns all of your elemental damage into physical damage and gives you a tiny bit of crit damage. So what this means is you can use an ability like, say, Barrenet's Replicating Missiles and turn the elemental damage to physical damage. Doing so works just like physical to elemental conversion. Same steps, same process. That means something like Overload won't affect your character anymore, but Decorated Soldier would affect that ability. I shouldn't say character. Would affect that ability. Now, I was using it with Calidor's Tempest to turn the fire damage into physical damage, so I had physical and aether together. With this build, it's actually not that bad, and like I mentioned in that video with Battlemage Reforged, I think there are a couple builds that are going to benefit from this weapon. I just don't think it's going to break the game or be anything crazy. My throat's a little, been a little dry lately, so don't be surprised if I'm throwing back water a lot tonight. I was looking through my magic cards, which I haven't done in a while, and there's a thin sheen of dust across the top box. So when I took it off, I think I just blew a ton of dust in my own face, and that's why I'm a little sore in the throat, or so I'd assume. Anyways, hey Captain Trigger Happy. I have yet to enable the smell-o-vision feature on Twitch. I think I had to apply to it, and I think it's actually harder to get than partner, so it's something I have to work on in the future. The other big draw to Battlemage Reforged, in my opinion, is mixing together devotion abilities to sort of tie together disparate elemental abilities, and it works fine. It just isn't, like, to me, elemental, if you're gearing fire damage, you're probably gonna have a lot of lightning and a lot of cold damage regardless. So I don't think it's that big a deal to have these switch over to physical, because the big drawback of this is all the physical gear is not geared for casters. So abilities that you use with casters, like Calidor's Tempest and Barrenet's Replicating Missiles and Alberic's Aether Ray, that you can do this conversion on smoothly, you've already got gear support for it, and there's no gear support for physical casting like this. Now, if you were doing something that's heavily cooldown based, like Force Wave, Calidor's with Wrath of Agravax in here, you can easily use Electra's Flash Freeze like this. Though I'm actually considering dropping the, what is that called again? Absolute Zero for Break Morale, because Break Morale hits bosses. Absolute Zero does not. Even though Absolute Zero, the trade-off is you deal a crap ton of damage with it, because that becomes a ridiculous amount of internal trauma damage. So it is sort of a trade-off there. So there are advantages and disadvantages to this weapon. just to bring everyone up to speed as to what's going on with Beronath Reforged. I'm actually going to switch that right now. No, I'll switch it after I put my gear back on so I know what my pluses are. I think I have a couple pluses to soldier. Anyways, for the soldier side of things, our main abilities we want here are support abilities. We want abilities on the soldier side that support Kalidor's Tempest, which is our main attack. And remember, we're doing the physical Aether version, not the fire Aether version. So I picked up Oliran's Rage. The internal trauma damage on here is not only added to Kalidor's Tempest because Kalidor's Tempest deals weapon damage. The percent internal trauma damage will affect the burn on Inferno. Now, I don't have Inferno focused on. So, I mean, I could probably spare some points from somewhere else and throw them onto Inferno. Actually, now that I think about it, I might just take the points from Absolute Zero and put them on Inferno. So that's probably this build switch I'll do. Break Morale would be my alternative choice. And the reason is, even though the reduced physical resistance on Inferno is scaled lower compared to Break Morale, you're hitting a lot more with this. So this reduced damage will override the reduced damage from Break Morale anyways. But it will stack with Absolute Zero is the thing. Because remember, percent damages, as a general rule, there are one or two exceptions in here. Percent reduction stacks with flat. But if you have two sources of flat or two sources of percent, they won't stack for reduction. So yeah, Oliran's Rage is our exclusive skill. You could potentially go with Reckless Power, but if you're going for Reckless Power, you're not going for Battlemage Reforged. So there's that. Plus, we get the offensive ability and movement speed out of Oliran's Rage. Warcry is awesome. Try to keep it at 12 out of 12. 12 out of 12 pretty much means it hits the whole screen for a 33% damage or health reduction to enemies, and it reduces their damage. Thus, increase. He doesn't have his armor on, Sino. Look, Sino. He has something like 12k with this on. I'm doing like a build video thing, so I take the armor off so we can look at the stats and the way I've spread them out. Anyways, Fighting Spirit's another 12 out of 12 thing, 1 point on Blitz, and we use Blitz to activate Reckless Tempest. Field Command has our Healing Rain. Really, Healing Rain can go on any defensive ability you have up all the time. We want that at 12 out of 12. Yep, you ruined my video. Get the hell out. Squad Tactics at 1. If you were to switch over to an attack-based thing instead of a caster-based thing, obviously you'd want to focus on that. Military Conditioning at 8. 1 point on Veterancy because I had a spare point. Decorated Soldier at 6. 1 point on Scars of Battle. Arcanist side, point on Mirror. 10 on Myvan Sphere. 1 on Conversion. Cap out Kalidor's. I'm probably gonna, now I'm really thinking about it, take the points out of Absolute Zero, put them in Inferno. That'll probably make the build work a little better. A point on Devastation. We are using a caster offhand here, so I mean, why not? It's an easy 1 point wonder in that case. We want Electras at 12 out of 12. Absolute Zero. So here's the trade-off between Inferno and Absolute Zero. Inferno can hit bosses. And focusing on Inferno increases just your overall damage with Kalidor's Tempest. Absolute Zero can hit the entire screen. It will reduce the physical resistance on the entire screen by 40%. And hit them up with internal trauma damage. So you can effectively kill the entire screen with Electra's Flash Freeze, at the expense of not being as damaging to bosses and things like that. So it's up to you. Hey, Deaky. Inner Focus, obvious thing to keep it 12 out of 12. Normally I'd overcap it, but I don't have the spare points. Wow, you really failed on that. You really failed on that emote, you know. And I know these are 1-pointers. So let's flip on our gear. And flip on our abilities. to actually flip those on. I think I flipped them on and off. Anyways, so yeah, like I said, I think I am actually going to take this and probably completely overcap. Maybe. I'm wondering if I can actually... No, I think I will completely overcap Inferno just to max out the damage on Calidors. But you can see where everything stands on the 2 trees. For Devotion, I picked up Aether Fire and Reckless Tempest for damage. Reckless Tempest is amazing like this. It just deals so much damage. Both physical and internal trauma. It's pretty substantial. You just need to have it leveled up. Aether Fire deals some pretty good damage with this particular setup. Our defensive abilities, we have Turtle Shell. Oh, we do have Bull Rush worked in there. I usually opt for the Panther if I'm going for Tree of Life, just because the Panther is good for anyone. And something like the Bull is mostly for like a physical build. So yeah, we picked that up. And then we have Tree of Life. I have, because regen is an issue with this character, Oaklane's Lantern and the Harvestman's Scythe to support our regen. There's the 12k health, guys.
What troubles you? Safe journey.
Yes. So if you convert physical to elemental, internal trauma damage becomes the 3 burns divided equally. Just like how physical damage would become the 3 elemental types divided equally. If you were to convert, I don't know if this exists in the game, elemental or physical, well, let's say vice versa. If you were to convert elemental to physical, it would turn all 3 elemental damage types, pretty much add them all together, and it's physical damage. Or even individually, I'd say it's just physical damage. But if you had something that dealt just elemental, like, say, Panetti's, it's straight 136 in this case. If you have something that's fire, this would be, 13 to 1900 in this case. Which you can see up here. It's going to list it a little lower, because that's one of the disadvantages of this particular build, is you're actually... Because you're taking 3 damages and switching them into 1, if you're taking 3 damage types, switching them into 1, you're actually taking a sheet DPS loss. Because, because of things like all damage, just applying to 1 damage type, in this case, instead of 3. So... just be aware your sheet DPS is going to be a little lower, but because your things like Reckless Tempest and Aether Fire are also going to be dealing physical damage, it's actually not a DPS loss, a true DPS loss. At least as far as I can tell. I did not hear about the buggy thing with Beronath and Armor, Sino. Anyways, if you were to convert physical to acid, I believe internal trauma damage becomes poison, but I don't think that exists in the game. If you do convert elemental or physical into vitality damage, you get vitality decay for your dots. I don't know that that exists in the game. I know Pierce to vitality does on like the Nightblade, and I think Pierce to acid does, but Pierce doesn't have a dot associated to it. Bleeding doesn't have a dot. Aether doesn't have a dot. Chaos doesn't have a dot. So if you're converting physical to Aether, internal trauma damage, I think is just straight up unaffected. Honestly, I don't think that's a big deal. I think that this particular setup is so weak and unoptimal, I think it's a fair trade-off. I just have to remember what buttons are what now. Also, when you really, really think about it, it would be unfair to have you have to deal with armor with, like, a caster ability just because you change the damage to physical. It would actually be an insane loss of functionality if you really, really think about it. Like I said, this entire setup is balanced out by the fact that it's kind of not that great. Like, I was going really, really giddy over it on Friday, because, I mean, I was like, oh man, you can, like, turn all this damage into a singular damage type, and in practice, it's so much more difficult to actually gear this character than it is to... I'm going to leave that a mystery. I didn't actually talk about my gear. Hey, it's something Cena doesn't know about. I'm not going to mention it. I'm not going to mention how it works. That's my little secret. It is the Ring of Fire off of Mark of Anathema. Yeah, that's the problem, is I didn't talk about my gear that much. So, like, I'm using a Tome of Arcane Wastes. I was thinking that Maynard's texts, the Sacred Texts of Maynard or whatever, would be pretty good, but they were only okay. And this is the only thing that had, like, caster offhand that had stats I wanted. My chest piece is a Clairvoyance Robe. I don't have any of the other set pieces. Honestly, I would rather... And then I have, like, Calidor's Shard. I would rather 3-piece... Actually, you could probably just drop these Consecrated, Exalted Spalders of Incantations for the Wrath of Agarek set. You know, this set right here. And I'd much rather have that set in these 4 slots and just run Fire Aether, and this would be much, much stronger as well. Aether Reach for Aether Gloves. Goldenburn Greaves. I also did run the Wraithwalkers here. Both worked relatively similarly. Stonehide of Nature's Bounty, Pants. A Juggernaut. Tinker's Ingenuity. Lifeweaver Signet and Streams of the Aether. It's all pretty standard stuff to me. There's no, like, notable tricky piece of gear you throw into this except for, you know, Beronath or Forged. Yeah, and you were right, Deaky. It is incredibly hard to gear this thing. Like, maybe in the future we'll get something that can really benefit from this, but it's like, eh. And like I mentioned, energy regen is still a problem for him because he's not, like, in full... Well, he's in full caster stuff. It's just, it's not good enough. So it's a cool in concept. It's a great theory crafting item. You know, that's actually a pretty good point, Zeno. If you want to do weird conversion things, they should be sets. I mean, he's doing okay. It's just I think it's not terrific. So you mentioned Inquisitor Soldier with Baronath. See, that's the thing. That could be a viable option. In the same way that I think the Tri-Elemental Saboteur is probably going to benefit from this weapon a lot. Because you've already got, like, a setup that's mostly around, like, physical attacking. So you're just simpling the build down and letting you concentrate on, like, say... In that case, I would probably say go for the Markovian set. And I think that'll be fine. That'll actually probably be a pretty powerful option for this. Except, I can already tell you that the Inquisitor's support for their abilities is going to be elemental based. So you're pretty much going to have to rely on your soldier gear. And I mean, we're not, like, the energy regen, it is a bit of a problem, but our energy lasts about as long as we need it to before we have to throw back a potion. So it isn't that bad. It's just, I'm much more of a stickler about using potions, where it's like, if I don't come back with a net gain on potions, then my build isn't good enough. I think that might be a Diablo 3 thing, but yeah, it's the Beronath Battlemage in a nutshell. It's cool in concept. It's cool in concept, but in execution it's really clunky. Kind of difficult to get working.